Welcome, everyone, to the Health Ranger Show. I'm your host, Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, joined today by Governor Jesse Ventura. Now, you probably know about Jesse Ventura's work. He is the creator of the show called Conspiracy Theory. He has a new book out called American Conspiracies. He's a New York Times best-selling author, and his book will be available in bookstores everywhere. Welcome to the show, Jesse. It's great to have you on.
Nice to be on, Mike. And you might add, too, that I'm sure they can probably order the book over the Internet also.
Now, this is a topic that gets a lot of people riled up. It seems to me that a lot of Americans kind of live in a bubble where they don't think there are such things as conspiracy theories. How do you bridge that?
I don't know. That's one of the real dilemmas. That's kind of the 800-pound gorilla that you face, because we have an ego in this country that somehow we believe that our government is totally on the up and up and doesn't do anything illegal or wrong, and yet we suspect every other government around the world. And I get that perception very much upon living in Mexico. When you view the United States from the outside looking in as opposed to the inside looking out, you get a whole different perception of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned before we started recording, I live outside the country too, and the expats that I talk to, you know, they have some of the same views that you espouse in your show, and the kind of skeptical thinking or critical thinking that you practice is practiced elsewhere around the world, but often not in the continental United States. It's a strange thing.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what I really believe it is? I believe that in our country, we have a great majority of people don't want to not believe in the American dream.
Right.
And if something of a major conspiracy were shown to them and proven beyond any doubt the government did it, I think it would destroy a lot of the American dream for a lot of people, and that's why they're really in self-imposed denial, I think.
Yeah, hence the need for making these conspiracies so, well, they make the excuses, the deniability, if you will, so strong so that they don't get caught in just one of them and the whole house of cards falls, right?
Yep. That's what I believe it is, but then again, I'm not a psychologist or anything, so
yeah.
Take it with that grain of salt.
Let's talk about what are these conspiracy theories. I mean, people are familiar with, of course, the 9/11 situation, but what are some of the other conspiracies that you really focus on in your new book, American Conspiracies?
Well, we go all the way back to Abraham Lincoln. We start with Abraham Lincoln, and the reason I started there is because it's interesting. I learned more doing this book than I did in all my school years and education years about the assassination of the president. I don't know if you know this, but I never knew this till I went into this book and did this book. It was a major conspiracy. 8 other people besides John Wilkes Booth, of course he was killed, 8 other people stood trial, were convicted. 4 of them were sentenced to death, including the first woman.
Wow. No, I didn't
know that.
Now,
how come we're not taught that in our high school and junior high history classes?
Right, it's always put on
and
one
I know
guy.
that we're not. You know how I know we're not? Because I wasn't taught it, as well as my nephew's 15 right now. And I happened to breach the subject with him a month or so ago. I asked him, I said, what do you know about the murder or the assassination of Abraham Lincoln? And he basically recited to me that what we all know, that Lincoln went to the Ford Theater, Booth snuck in behind him, shot him in the back of the head, screamed something, leaped to the ground, hurt his leg, they chased him down in a farmhouse, burnt it down, and killed him. That's what he was taught.
Right.
He knew nothing that 8 other people were tried, and really it was a massive conspiracy. What was supposed to happen, not only was Lincoln to die, so was Vice President Johnson, Secretary of State Seward, as well as Ulysses S. Grant. But they were only successful on one of them.
And so we have a whole history then of American conspiracy. Bring us up to modern.
Look at why aren't we taught that in school?
Yeah, good question.
Well, do you want to know why I believe it? They don't want any conspiracy taught, because that way it sets the stage for all these other ones.
Right.
They're all lone nuts. The other interesting thing to think about, every one of these lone nut conspirators, how come they teach you all 3 of their names? John Wilkes Booth, Lee Harvey Oswald, Mark David Chapman. Now I'll ask you a question. Can I ask you one?
Yeah, sure.
What's Charles Manson's middle name?
Right. You don't know. It's never taught.
Exactly. The most notorious murderer in American history. You ain't got a clue what his middle name is. But every one of these political assassins, You know all three of their names. That's psychological, so that you'll always equate it to just that person.
Very interesting. Now, do you think that these assassins, I mean, in your show, your conspiracy theory show, you cover MK Ultra, you cover Manchurian candidates and post-hypnotic suggestions. Do you think these three assassins were manipulated in that way?
I don't think Oswald was. Lee Harvey, no, not at all. I think Oswald was actually a contract agent for the CIA and also he had a number with the FBI, too, as an informant. But all of that stuff, of course, the government won't let us see because they lock it up in the National Archives. So we can't even see Lee Harvey Oswald's tax return. And you know why? Because of national security. How could Lee Harvey Oswald, a former private in the Marine Corps, tax return be of national security?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, I can tell you why. Because on his tax return, it might say he was getting paid by the government.
Sure.
Which would then lead to the fact that, wait a minute, he's not who they told us he was.
Uh-huh.
See, so they've got to continue to hide his tax return.
Yeah, a lot of little
because
details.
If it came out that he was paid by a government agency or something that they could follow a paper trail back to the government, well, that would destroy the whole Oswald myth, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
There you go.
I was really happy to see your work moving in this direction in the last few years, by the way, after you got out of politics, I don't know if you got out completely, but I mean, you served as the governor of Minnesota, and I remember you had an audio program out at that time that was very popular. I listened to it. It was very inspiring. I think it was called Do I Stand Alone? Remember that program?
No, it wasn't the program. That was my second book.
Oh, the book. I had the audio version of the book then.
Yeah, that was my second book. My first book was I Ain't Got Time to Bleed. My second one was Do I Stand Alone? Then I wrote Don't Start the Revolution Without Me, and now this one, American Conspiracies.
Now, what then? You must have seen things as governor that you can't even talk about. I mean,
no, I talk about them. I talk about them in this book. Did you know that there's a CIA agent implanted in all state government? I find that interesting because the CIA's mission statement says they're not to be operational inside the United States. Now, I can't vouch for the other 49 states, but it is in Minnesota, and I can't believe Minnesota's the exception.
Well, you were interviewed by a CIA team.
23 of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's that all about?
I don't know. Ask them.
Okay, well,
they requested, and I did it. And, well, it was interesting because all the questions pertain to how I got elected.
Yes.
So I looked at it as either number one, I talked to my friend Dick Marcinko. I called Dick that day, the former commander of SEAL Team 6, a friend of mine, because Dick's more savvy on that stuff. And I asked Dick what he thought it was about. He said, they didn't see you coming. You were off the radar screen. All of a sudden you win, and you're the most famous politician next to Bill Clinton. And now, did they not see me coming because they were embarrassed because they didn't see me coming? Or was this interview to learn about how I got elected so there would be no more independents doing that?
That was one of the themes of your second book, was being an independent in there. I mean, you were attacked by both sides of the aisle.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, no one
Plus
gave
the media.
you the credit that you deserve for having new ideas there.
Plus the media attacked me.
Right.
Because they're in the back pockets of the two parties.
Of course. Okay, then this leads me to another question. A lot of people are asking me this about you, and sometimes I get asked this question too because I cover a lot of conspiracies about Big Pharma. But how on earth do you stay alive? I mean, why are they allowing you to publish books and to have a voice? I mean, it's a legitimate question that people keep asking.
Well, look at it this way, okay? If everything in my book is bogus and not true, well, then they don't have anything to worry about now, and why wouldn't I be alive? Now, if it is true, then your question has valid. But then again, if it is true, but I think they prefer just to poo-poo it.
Right.
Ignore it. It'll go away.
Yeah.
And that's how they always survive it. They just ignore it. Anything that comes forward, they ignore.
Well, it's almost like if they went after you, they would give credence to what you're talking about.
Exactly. Because if they went after me, then it would show that I was on the trail.
Exactly.
I don't know. My wife worries about me all the time. And in fact, we have a standard thing that I told her, and we agree, if anything happens to me, don't accept what they tell you.
Right.
Like if I happen to fall off a building.
Of course. No, I've gotten to the point where I have a set of data that gets released if something happens to me. And, a set of data, video, documentaries, files, and things like that. I let that be known out there just so that they know something's going to get out.
Well, one of the things, some people have told me that I'm too high profile.
Yeah, could be.
That may play into it too. But then I thought back and thought, well, who's higher profile than President Kennedy? And he got killed.
Good point. Now, speaking of high profile, you're doing book signings all over the East Coast and the West Coast with your new book, American Conspiracies. It's great to get out to the public. Have you already done some of those signings, or is that just beginning?
No, today's actually the first day. I just flew up from Mexico late last night, and I got into New York City about 10:30 last night, and today's the first day. I'll be on the Today Show tomorrow. I'm on Larry King tonight, and then I'm on The View again, and I'm on a few other shows. But amazingly, nobody at Fox Nighttime will have me on.
That seems strange.
They're afraid of me. They can't bully me, so they avoid me. But I'm doing Fox Morning tomorrow, and I'm going to say it right on the air. I'm going to say, what's the matter with your tough nighttime guys? How come they're all afraid of me? They can't bully me? Is that the deal?
But you're getting on lots of major media outlets, and this really speaks to, I think, that there's a new acceptability now about conspiracy theories. I mean, people understand more about the Federal Reserve now, and even 9/11 is starting to go mainstream in some aspects, wouldn't you say?
Well, it's getting there, and that's because more of us are asking questions. See, that's the key to this whole thing, is not to be afraid to ask questions. Don't back down. Don't accept the status quo. One of the most unique, I start my book off with a quote from a guy who I think you and I will both agree is smarter than us two probably together. And here's the quote. Quote, "A foolish faith in authority is the worst enemy of truth." I'll repeat that. A foolish faith in authority is the worst enemy of truth. Who do you think said that?
I would guess Jefferson, but I'm not sure.
Albert Einstein.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. I start the book off with a quote from Albert Einstein, and to me it tells the whole book. A foolish faith in authority is the worst of truth, the worst enemy of truth.
Well, and that's what we have right now, an epidemic, I think, in America of foolish faith in authority.
Yeah. Well, that's because through the Bush administration, we were told that if you go against the government, you're unpatriotic.
Yeah.
You couldn't speak out against the Iraq War. They wouldn't let anybody because that was unpatriotic. And what they don't realize, Thomas Jefferson said dissension's the greatest form of patriotism.
That's right. Now, in your book, do you cover the Federal Reserve and the money supply? I did not get an advanced copy.
Yeah, we cover, that's the chapter on, let's see here, I've got it in front of me. Let me get to the, what do we name that chapter? That chapter is The Wall Street Conspiracy.
Yes.
It's the second to the last one.
Just lay it out for people and expose what's really happening with the money supply?
Well, as best we can. Remember, I'm not a Harvard economist, I don't know fully. It's beyond me. But I do spell out the fact that it's interesting how the whole thing, the bailout went down, how they let Lehman Brothers go to the dogs, and they saved, what's the other one?
Goldman Sachs?
Goldman Sachs, thank you. And yet it stands to reason because I think the last 6 secretary to the treasuries all came out of Goldman Sachs. And that's what we point out in the book, is how even Obama's Goldman Sachs, every president for the last 25 years, or more, has had their head of the Treasury has come out of Goldman Sachs, and they're the ones that got bailed out.
Sure.
Lehman Brothers went down the tubes. Now, think about it. What better way to eliminate and monopolize your competition?
Yeah, absolutely. Let the competition fail and bail out yourself.
That's right. So they let the ones go by the wayside while the others got more, a monopoly.
Yeah. But isn't that the way big corporations run everything now? I mean, look at medicine. I cover mostly medicine on our website. But medicine, it's the same thing, that the drug companies want to keep you as their patient while they outlaw everything else that might help protect you.
Yep. It's all about follow the money.
Do you cover aspartame or any of the other health conspiracies in your book?
No.
But
let's see. Let me go back to the thing, and I can run them down here quick for you. We do the first not alone nut, John Wilkes Booth. The big money plot to overthrow FDR, the Kennedy assassination, the assassination of Malcolm X, the murder of Martin Luther King, the assassination of Robert Kennedy, Watergate revisited, the CIA's war against Nixon, and that's a shocker. It may not be anything what you thought about Watergate, and I'll tell you, let me read you a quote if I may. Let me see if I can find that again. It's a quote from G. Gordon Liddy that he said in the year 2004, I think. Liddy said, let me get to it here. I got it marked, so it shouldn't take me too long to find it. Now I can't, but we'll get to it here.